Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Billy Dees podcast. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, I will be commentating, so I guess you could say this is going to be a commentary episode. I'm going to center around this whole Jimmy Kimmel situation, some of the confusion about free speech in regard to this, and in general, the reactions online to what happened with Charlie Kirk, which, we'll get into that. They were very disappointing, some of these horrible reactions, and we're going to get into that. Last week, I touched quite extensively on the Jimmy Kimmel situation, and since then, of course, he's been reinstated. He's back on the air. The various media companies that were involved with some of the affiliates, they're either going to put him back on or he already is. So a lot has happened in the last week, but nonetheless, you know, I've done some controversial topics over the years. I didn't believe that last week's episode was really that hot in terms of controversy. But for whatever reason, I got more negative comments than what I usually get when I tackle a more controversial topic. A lot of the people that normally are in step with what we talk about here on the program were on Jimmy Kimmel's side, so to speak, or at least they were in principle, and I'll get into that in just a moment. Here again, if you are new, I want you to know that typically I do not take a quote-unquote side. I was never a Trump person, never was that. And lately, I would have to say I lean certainly more to the right than I do the left. But I don't believe that being on a team is a good idea. And I got to tell you, a lot of what happened here in the last week with me and online and throughout the media has to do with people being on a team. The people that were mad at me was because I picked on somebody who was on their team more so than objectively checking things out. And I'm going to try to go through some of that. I will be very honest and forthright with you. If you are a Jimmy Kimmel fan and you feel that he is a victim, you probably won't like this episode that much. But I would ask you to step out of that zone, step out of that, well, Jimmy Kimmel's on my team. He makes fun of the guy I don't like. Try to step out of that zone. What I try to do is go a place or places where other points of view generally steer to the right or to the left. I try to cover some ground here that gives the subject more nuance and so on. So kind of stay with me on this. One of the comments that I got quite a bit on social media aimed at me was that I just didn't get it. I just didn't get the point of why they were upset about Jimmy Kimmel, because I went through this whole rant about if he was really that popular, he could, there's other forms of media that are available now, including the one that I am on. And people like Tucker Carlson and all these other people have done very, very well away from traditional media. And that includes Glenn Beck and a lot of other people. They became bigger than what they were before. And here again, the response was, well, you just don't get the point, though, about what happened to him. So, all right, fine. I just didn't get the point. First of all, I covered the point pretty thoroughly in the last episode, but what happens is people hear what they want to hear, and a lot of times they go off of clips from the show, or a lot of times I get quoted on other podcasts or blogs or whatever, so people on the strength of that will react, and I understand that. I'm probably guilty of that as well. But anyway, let me try to go into this as thoroughly as I possibly can. There is a difference from what you might call free speech, which basically, in a nutshell, without getting into a lot of detail here, has to do with governmental censorship, especially when you are criticizing the government. The whole idea is that people can criticize their government without disappearing in the middle of the night or what have you. And when we're talking broadcast, this is a little different, because there are what are called broadcast standards, and that can vary from one market to another. And then there's FCC regulations. And here again, the premise is that the airwaves belong to the people. And the idea is that these airways have to serve the common good. The common good. So if you are constantly slanting things, then that's not the common good. And the other thing is with broadcast is you usually have advertisers that you have to, appease. You have to make sure they're happy. You're beholden to these advertisers because they are the people that are keeping you on the air. So there's a lot of dynamics here to broadcast. At one time, back in the 1950s, let's say, part of the 1960s, news and points of view were actually considered a public service. And broadcast networks did these things begrudgingly because the real money was on, talk shows like I Love Lucy and all this, people falling down and getting a pie in the face. These were the things that brought in advertising dollars. And to have to present the news, that was a chore they had to do to serve the common good. And before news and political opinion became a business, this was something that was done pretty objectively. Okay, well, times have changed. I, for one, in years past, back in the 1990s, I produced a radio ad that had the sound effect of a plane crashing. And this advertisement was a parody. I was kind of shooting for the airplane movies. You remember the airplane movies that parodied the airplane disaster movies? And it was done in good humor, in my opinion. And I wish I would have kept that ad. That was back in the days of tape. And I lost track of that advertisement. But what happened is with broadcast standards, interestingly, hundreds, if not thousands of people heard that ad. And all the feedback that I got was it was funny. It was hysterical. The person that I produced the ad for told me that that was the most successful ad that they ran. But the manager of the station, who is responsible for the broadcast standards, if the FCC is going to come down on this station, he's the person who has to bear the brunt of it. He didn't find the humor in this ad at all. He was afraid that people were going to take this as some literal depiction of a tragic event. And of course, here again, the entire ad was clearly a parody. And in my opinion, what happened was this was a guy, and this guy, he had about a size 22 waist. He looked like a dying tree. He had this giant beard that probably had a size 35. And if you checked the Wikipedia or the online dictionary under prick, his image was probably there. This was a radio station in Akron, Ohio at the time, and that radio station doesn't exist anymore. And wherever this guy is now, he's probably still a prick. I mean, that's just the long and the short of it. He decided that he was going to exert his power over me and make me pull that ad, which I had to do. Now, here again, this was a broadcast standard that they wanted to maintain. This has nothing to do with free speech. And what Jimmy Kimmel said, in a lot of people's estimation, did not meet a broadcast standard. I'm not even sure that this was technically a free speech issue. I know a lot of people have insinuated that the Trump administration exerted something directly over this. And there was talk that the FCC might have been involved. I have not been able to draw a direct connection to that. I would certainly hope that is not the case for whatever reason. I just don't feel that this was something worth meddling in. Now, Trump, and here again, I'm not necessarily a pro-Trump person. Trump fueled some speculation about this because he ran his mouth. And this is something that he probably should have stayed away from because all he did was fuel speculation that he had something to do with it. But I'm going to work under the assumption that the federal government had very little to do with this. This had to do with broadcast standards. And here again, there was a number of different companies involved in putting Jimmy Kimmel on the air. And it also had to do with broadcast standards intermingling with advertisers. Are advertisers happy about what happened here? That is the real issue. Now, if you're going to tell me that he was taken off for no good reason, there's a number of people who got involved with broadcast standards, including myself, who had to take things off the air or were taken off the air for no good reason. One of them was Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly asked a question that was deemed too bad for broadcast standards and was taken off the air. A lot of these people that are coming at me so concerned about Jimmy Kimmel didn't say anything about Megyn Kelly. That's because she is not on their team. Tucker Carlson is another one. And you talk about ratings, he ruled the time slot he was in. He ruled it. He not only ruled it in terms of news, but he ruled it on other things. If memory serves me correctly, there were certain nights where his ratings beat the NBA playoffs those years. So this wasn't ratings. Here again, he just said something that his wheelhouse didn't like, and he was taken off. Now, a lot of these people that came at me about Jimmy Kimmel, where were they when this happened to Tucker Carlson? As a matter of fact, what did Jimmy Kimmel say about Tucker Carlson?
Has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means. What a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is.
Yeah, he sounds like he was all bereaved over the idea that Tucker Carlson was removed for some broadcast standards violation by some entity. But anyway, let's move on. I know a lot of people are still worried about the possible connection between a free speech violation with the FCC. Okay, I don't know if there was, like I said before, but I do know that there have been attempts by the federal government to interfere with free speech online. As a matter of fact, there's very little doubt about this. But again, it didn't happen to the person on your team, so you weren't that worried about it. Let's start with Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg stated that the Biden administration pressured Meta, which is Facebook's parent company, to censor certain content during the COVID-19 pandemic. He made these remarks in a letter to the House Judiciary Committee and during an appearance on Joe Rogan.
They pushed us super hard to take down things that were honestly were true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, you know, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down.
All right, that doesn't sound very free speechy now, does it? And what happened with Meta wasn't the only case. Investigative journalist Matt Taibbi, who is absolutely fantastic, by the way, produced the Twitter files. And what this did was reveal how the company handled content moderation. Content moderation. That's an interesting term. Now, this was before Elon Musk took it over. And this was regarding a couple of cases in particular. Number one was probably the Hunter Biden laptop story. And the other one was the suspension of the then former president, Donald Trump. Now, here again, this was back when it was Twitter. And a lot of the people that are crying about what happened with Jimmy Kimmel felt that this was a great thing. And here again, I want to be very clear on this. When you start judging situations based upon the people involved, are they on your team or are they not on your team? For one, first and foremost, you are setting yourself up to be manipulated. Because once you are firmly on a team, you'll do whatever the coach says. And there's a lot of people out there who are just following what the coach says. They're not really following what's happening on the entire field with the other team and other people involved. So that's my caution there. And the other thing is you have to be very careful about setting these precedents. It's one thing to laugh when somebody you don't like is taken off of something, some platform or something, but you're setting a precedent for a time when it's going to happen to you. And that's what people forget in all of this. But we'll move on. One of the things that I heard in terms of the comments that were sent my way when I talked about the last episode, and I talked about some of the online celebrations, for lack of a better term, over what happened to Charlie Kirk. And a lot of people said, "Oh, where are these celebrations? I haven't seen one." Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do a quick sampling here, shall we?
Hey, MAGA, how bad does it hurt? The Jimmy Kimmel's back, but you guys can't get your person back.
Charlie Kirk family. Did you see all that blood that came out of his body? It was like, whoa. I'm not saying that violence isn't the way.
Everyone's saying that we are Charlie Kirk. Y'all sound like y'all want to meet the same fate he met. We are Charlie Kirk. You can meet the same fate.
Bitches, let's all join hands and bow our heads in thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk. Thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers.
There were some real sweethearts in that reel, wasn't there? And believe me, I'm just scratching the surface. There's plenty more. You get the idea. On the heels of that, I wanted to point out something about Charlie Kirk as we go into exactly what Jimmy Kimmel said that caused the ruckus. Charlie Kirk went out, I would say very bravely, into the public to engage people, whether it be at college campuses or what have you. And his life was under threat. That is why he had the bulletproof vest. That is why he had the security details. He was constantly being threatened. But his faith was a motivator, and so were the things that he believed in, and I admire that. Now, I'm not particularly a person who practices Christian principles, to say the least, but I can admire someone like that who feels what they believe in is so strong that they are willing to go out and risk their life. Now, Jimmy Kimmel, by contrast, is in a television studio that has security. He has an audience that likes him and is very friendly to him and laughs at his every little quip. And he lives in a community that is very exclusive. So a lot of the ideals that he espouses, for all of the average people out there, the people that have to lock their doors at night, he's not really living their truth. He's not really putting himself out there. Certainly not the way Charlie Kirk did. And what I would say here, and here again, reflecting on the videos and the clips that we just heard, there's nothing more that cowards like than the downfall of the brave. Cowards rejoice when the brave fall. I'm just putting that out there because you can hear a certain liveliness to one's words. Here is Jimmy Kimmel. This was the remark that got him in trouble when he talked about the affiliation that the shooter had.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Yes, there it is. His opposition, as it were doing everything they can to characterize this person as something other than their own. What did the official accounts of this say?
Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. She stated that Robinson began to date his roommate, a biological male who was transitioning genders.
Now, I want to be clear here. I don't like it when the actions of a maniac is assigned to a particular group for political reasons. there is a certain relevance. Let's say, for example, when a white Christian goes out and does something horrible, it's important to understand what group this person belonged to, and is there something going on in this group that could be encouraging this behavior. So I believe it is relevant. But to just slap a label on an entire political group and call them out for the actions of a maniac, I feel is wrong. Nonetheless, this was a clear misrepresentation of the facts here, and he did it in a way that was very glib, and the timing was horrible. This was right when the wounds of a nation for so many people that loved and admired Charlie Kirk were open. The timing of this was particularly bad. Okay, with that being said, here again, he got into some broadcast standards issues, and I'm sure the advertisers were nervous. The different broadcast companies besides ABC were possibly nervous as well, and some of them on their own decided to pull his programming until this got resolved. All right, with that being said, when he comes back, we all knew that there would be a huge spike in ratings, and that's exactly what happened. I've heard various things. I don't have any solid ratings numbers, but the general feeling is that a lot of people tuned in to Jimmy Kimmel to hear what he was going to say after he was reinstated back on ABC with his program. And for all the people that are going to tell me how badly he was treated, let me remind you that he benefited from this. He got a ratings spike, so much so that a lot of people feel that his comments were orchestrated because he got a huge ratings boost from this. The Jimmy Kimmel show became relevant again because of this incident. So not only was he not a victim, not only was he not picked on under the guise of free speech, he actually benefited from the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So lots of people tune into his program to hear what he's got to say, and this is a part of it.
But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual.
We are going to contrast what he just said there with what he said originally, and here again, specific to the points that really triggered this in just a moment. But I want to point something else out. Like I said earlier, cowards often rejoice when the brave fall. And when they rejoice and they get themselves in a little trouble over it, they don't really apologize. What they do, though, is they extol the virtues of forgiveness, hoping that some of it will spill onto them.
A moment over the weekend, a very beautiful moment. I don't know if you saw this on Sunday. Erica Kirk forgave the man who shot her husband. She forgave him. That is an example we should follow.
Yes, forgiveness is something that we should all learn to do. Now, I'm not apologizing, of course, but forgiveness is something that all of you can learn how to do. And when I extol the virtues of forgiveness, I'm really hoping some of that spills onto me, even though I really didn't apologize for anything. That's basically what you heard there. Now, I got to be honest with you. Like I said, I'm not the world's greatest Christian. If I was Erica Kirk, I don't know if I could forgive the shooter. I probably couldn't. And I got to tell you, if Jimmy Kimmel is hoping that through osmosis or his, extolling these virtues of forgiveness, that some of that is going to trickle down onto him, as far as I am concerned, no. No. He can take his virtues of forgiveness and he can shove them right up his ass. Now, as we move forward here, let's contrast what he said versus what he said. And I got them separated by my famous little whooshes.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. With the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Oh, and by the way, remember the video, the infamous video of the lady very sarcastically raising up thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk? She went on her own victim rant here recently.
I posted a follow-up video expressing why I felt the way I did, and even ended with, I hope Charlie Kirk makes a full recovery and goes on to become a gun violence advocate. Since if you have watched any of the videos on my page, you would know I stand firmly on not being violent and that violence is not the way we are going to fix things in this country. Well, since I posted those two videos, my life has been completely turned upside down and I have been thrown into what I can only explain as literal hell.
I want to be as clear as I can on this point. Apparently, this young lady was threatened, and that is complete and total bullshit. Nobody deserves that. Not even Jimmy Kimmel deserves that. I've been threatened because of the podcast, and years ago when I was a disc jockey, I was threatened because I played music people didn't like. And anybody who's been on the receiving end of that kind of madness knows that nobody deserves that. Now, there's different levels to how we communicate. And here again with Jimmy Kimmel, it was through the air. And there's first broadcast standards, which can vary depending on the broadcast company. I've worked for radio stations that you could get away with a lot. I've worked for other radio stations where you couldn't. And here again, they're ultimately accountable to the FCC. So you have to give them some latitude in terms of how they want to protect themselves. There's also advertisers. Now, advertisers can say, hey, that's not for me, and pull the plug. And broadcast, for the most part, is almost entirely funded by advertising. So there's these components there. I am against governmental censorship, no matter who the president is. All right. And I want to also state this. Some of these celebrations about Charlie Kirk, in my opinion, are dangerously close to being on thin ice when it comes to free speech provisions, because free speech provisions do not allow for celebrating or wishing harm on someone. And when you celebrate a violent act that was done to someone and you say, I'm okay with this, I'm happy about this because this person stood for A, B, and C, what you have just done is paint a target on the back of anybody who stands for A, B, and C. So you have to be very careful of that. But with the exception of that type of thing, I am a free speech absolutist. And I do believe that you have the right, in terms of free speech, to run your mouth and be an asshole, just like this young lady did and just like Jimmy Kimmel did. Now, Jimmy Kimmel's getting praised for it. He's benefiting from the horrible thing that happened to Charlie Kirk. I do not believe that the current spike, I did predict a spike in ratings for him as he became relevant again through all of this controversy, and people would tune in to hear what he had to say. And that did happen. Now, how long that is going to be sustained is another thing. It's going to be a couple of weeks before the baseline of his ratings starts to level off, and we can kind of make a determination, was this ultimately good for his ratings or not? I can tell you that I do believe there's something different about what happened to Charlie Kirk. And it's one thing to do something stupid in the past and have it get forgotten. It's another thing with Charlie Kirk. I believe that this is a wound. This is a stain on his broadcast legacy that is not going to go away. And the final point, and there's people who celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk who are finding this out. It can have other repercussions in your life, and we all know that, whether it be your job, whether it be the followers that you have, and so on and so forth. And that's part of the process. Some people feel that it's worth that price. And if they want to take that chance, that is up to them, but they can't complain about it when it happens. Now, here again, I want to be very clear, short of violence, no one should have themselves or their family threatened. That is complete and total bullshit. And all the people that behaved in this manner towards Charlie Kirk and celebrated his death, none of them should be being threatened. We should all show that we are better than that. Okay, as we wind down this episode, and again, we are in production September 27th, 2025. The big breaking news is that of James Comey, former FBI director, being indicted. And this was a first, former FBI director being indicted. And I know there's a lot of people upset about the fact that they feel that this was politically motivated. All I can tell you is as this moves forward, we'll go where the facts lead us. My early inclination is that this won't go far, and if it does, he's probably going to get a slap on the wrist. But if you're worried about political motivations when it comes to prosecutions and indictments and all these other things, let me harken back to what I said earlier. These precedents were set before. We had a former president who was indicted for what amounted to political shenanigans. Was he guilty of political shenanigans? Probably. He shuffled money around to hide the fact, probably from his wife, that he paid to have sex with a sex worker. Now, does this rise to the level of being something that a former president should be indicted for? Did he start a war under false pretenses or anything like that? No, he had sex. And here again, I'm not the biggest Christian in the world, but I do have a certain amount of morality. I don't feel that cheating on your wife or doing these types of things is a good thing, but does it rise to the level of being the first president who was indicted for something? I don't know about that. And prosecuted and charged and all these other things. Found guilty. Does it rise to that level? I mean, we could debate that, but the fact that we have to debate it says a lot. So these precedents have been set. And to cheer on one hand and not for the other, for what is essentially the same situation with different players involved, is exactly what I said at the top of this episode. We have to start evaluating things regardless of what team we are on. If we are on a blue team or a red team or whatever, when something breaks, there's one thing to have a philosophical standard that you go by, and this is kind of what I like. It's another thing to have those filters create a reality for you that serves you and only you and not the other people. That is where the division is coming from now. We all have a set of standards based upon the people involved. Are they on our team or are they not on our team? That's a bad recipe for America. It really is. All right. I am Billy Dees. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Remember, you can find me on social media at Billy Dees on what used to be Twitter, now X. That's kind of like my social media home. And you can find the Billy Dees podcast anywhere podcasts are found on your favorite podcasting platform. We have been there 10 years strong. So we're easy to find on your favorite platform. If you can't find us, I don't know what to tell you, but we're there. Thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X at Billy Dees for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.